For nearly 200 years, a group of people built a wealthy, self-governing world in the heart of Louisiana. Land along the Cane River, businesses in New Orleans, schools and churches and orphanages, all built by women who owned their own lives. They spoke their own language, a mix of French and West African words that existed nowhere else on earth. You've probably heard a different story about them. The beautiful women at quadroon balls, trading companionship for luxury under what's called contracts that promised money and housing in exchange for a relationship. That story is mostly fiction. White travel writers made it up, projecting their own fantasies onto a reality they barely understood. What they actually did with that freedom tells a different story. They owned property, ran businesses, and built their community through their DNA, becoming a people with their own unique genetic fingerprint. And then something happened. A quiet government system erased them, one certificate at a time. But what the DNA actually reveals about Louisiana Creole women is far more disturbing than the myth. By the end, you will never think about Creole Louisiana the same way again. Before we start, what do you know about your own family history? Drop a comment below. And if you've been following stories like this, subscribe. There's more to come. Start with the story you've probably heard, the quadroon balls. The story goes that beautiful, light-skinned women of color were presented to wealthy white European men at formal dances in New Orleans. Their mothers supposedly made deals, passage agreements, contracts that promised housing, money, and freedom for any children. It is a story that has been told for generations in books and movies and tourist guides. There is just one problem. It never happened that way. Historian Emily Clark spent years digging through the archives, French colonial records, Spanish notarial registries, American legal documents. She was looking for written passage contracts, the supposed legal backbone of this whole system. She found nothing. Zero. The word plat does not appear in any New Orleans record from before the Civil War. Not one single written contract has ever been found. The quadroon balls were mostly made up by white travel writers in the 1800s. They came to New Orleans, saw women of color at social events, and wrote wild stories for audiences back east who wanted something exotic. Formal marriage was how free people of color formed their families. In the 1820 New Orleans census, about 73.5% of free women of color headed their own homes. Compare that to white women, just 11.2%. That number stops you cold. They ran their own households at a rate nearly 7 times higher than white women. They owned property throughout the Vieux Carré, Faubourg Marigny, and Tremé neighborhoods. They ran businesses as merchants, seamstresses, and property developers, buying real estate in their own names. These were business owners in a society that gave them almost no legal protection. But paper can only go so far. To see who they really were, we need their DNA. In 2012, a team of researchers led by Dr. Lara Sucheston published a study in a science journal called PLOS One. They were looking at prostate cancer data, checking genetic patterns across different groups of people. They were not looking for Creole history, but the data showed them something they could not ignore. When they looked at the DNA of African Americans from Louisiana who said they had Creole roots, something strange showed up. These people did not match other African American groups. They formed their own distinct cluster, their own separate group. On average, the Creole group carried about 65% West African roots, about 30% European, mostly French and Spanish, and about 5% Native American. Compare that to the broader African American average, about 78% African, 20% European, and less than 2% Native American. But those averages hide a deeper split, one that only shows up when you separate the mothers from the fathers. That Native American thread is the clue. 5% might not sound like much, but it's proof that something different happened here. In most of the American South, the Native American DNA is so small it barely shows up. In Louisiana, it stayed. That means the early colonial mixing between Frenchmen and Native women left a lasting biological record that survived centuries of legal and social pressure. The study held up under scrutiny. Large sample size, well-preserved DNA, clean data. Louisiana Creoles are a people with their own unique genetic fingerprint, a history that cannot be found anywhere else in the country. But the genetic data can only go so far. The most shocking finding came when they looked at the male and female lines separately. Here is how DNA tracks your ancestors through time. Two types follow a single parent line. Mitochondrial DNA passes from mother to every child she has. Sons and daughters both carry it, but only daughters pass it on. The Y chromosome passes from father to son only. If you want to know where the fathers came from, you look at the Y chromosome. Separate stories, running in parallel, never crossing. When the researchers separated those two stories, the picture split wide open. The paternal lines, the Y chromosomes, were almost all European. French and Spanish mostly. That makes sense on the surface. European men were present in the colony. They fathered children. Their genetic signatures passed down through sons. But the maternal lines told a completely different story. The mitochondrial DNA traced back almost all to Africa and the Americas, specifically to the Senegambia region of West Africa, haplogroups like L1b, L2a, L3b, L3d. There is a reason Senegambia dominates these maternal lines. Historical shipping records show that roughly 70% of enslaved Africans brought to early French colonial Louisiana came directly from that single region. That was a migration corridor, and the DNA preserved it. And alongside those African lineages, Native American haplogroups A, 2, and B2, lineages that trace directly back to indigenous women who became part of early French colonial households. Think about what that means. The men who contributed to this population came from Europe. The women came from Africa and the Americas. It is the genetic signature of a sharply uneven world, one where European men formed relationships with African, and those women became the foundation of an entire community. There was a small percentage of European mitochondrial DNA too, haplogroups H, H1C, H4A. That means some European women also became part of the free community of color during the colonial era. They crossed a line that the law said should not be crossed, and their mother's family line survived centuries of laws that banned marriage between races. So the full picture is this: a population built primarily by African and Native American mothers, carrying the genetic memory of their origins, with a smaller thread of European maternal ancestry woven in, because the mothers who held that memory were also the ones being moved, erased, and disappeared, and the DNA was just beginning to tell that part. Now, you might be thinking that this pattern of European men and African women is not unique to Louisiana, and you would be right. Across the Americas, the colonial world was built on uneven relationships between colonizers and colonized women. What makes Louisiana different is what happened next. The three-level system, white free people of color, enslaved, gave women like Coin and Dalil a legal space to build something real. Property rights, business ownership, inheritance, education. These women turned a system designed for exploitation into a way to build wealth. But the existence of that middle space also made them a target, because the moment the Americans arrived with their two-sided system, those women and their descendants became something that did not fit and had to be eliminated. The same legal structures that enabled their rise became the plan to wipe them out. That is the part of the story the DNA alone cannot tell. Marie-Thérèse Coinsoin lived this reality, and her story is the closest thing we have to a living document of what the DNA reveals. She was born into slavery in August 1742 at the Natchitoches colonial outpost in what is now Louisiana. Her parents were African-born, François and Marie-Françoise, and they passed down knowledge that would save her. Coin was trained in pharmacology and nursing, using botanical medicine traditions that came straight from West Africa. She knew which plants healed and which plants killed. In 1767, she was leased to a French merchant named Claude Thomas Pierre Metoyer. He needed someone to manage his home and tavern. Over the next 20 years, their relationship produced 10 children. Under French colonial law, the Code Noir, this arrangement created legal complications. The parish priest eventually threatened legal action against Metoyer for violating those codes. So in 1778, Metoyer purchased Coin and set her free. She was 36 years old. Now imagine what she did next. She took a 68-acre tract of land that Metoyer granted her and turned it into an agricultural empire. She farmed tobacco, trapped wild bears for their pelts in Greece, and manufactured herbal medicines and shipped it all down to the New Orleans market. She used Spanish land grant policies to expand her holdings. By the time she was done, she controlled over 1,000 acres of rich riverland along the Cane River. She used that wealth to buy her children out of slavery, one by one. She bought them legally, held them in her own name to protect them from state deportation laws, and then freed them when the legal conditions were right. She did the same for her grandchildren. She transformed the legal category of slave owner into a mechanism of protection. She used every tool the legal system gave her, and some it did not, to build a family legacy that endures to this day. Modern genetic testing of her descendants along the Cane River has confirmed the preservation of her mitochondrial DNA. Her maternal line is still there, passed down through generations, genetic proof of everything she built. Then there is Henriette Delisle. Born in New Orleans in 1813, she was the daughter of a white merchant and a free woman of color. Her mother groomed her specifically for the plaçage system, training her to attract a wealthy white partner. But Delisle rejected that path entirely. When her mother was declared incompetent in 1835, took control of the family assets, sold properties, and used the money to establish a religious lay community. In 1842, she founded the Sisters of the Holy Family, the first Catholic order of religious sisters of African descent in the United States. She ran secret schools at night to educate enslaved people, an act that was illegal under state law. Her own brother, who was light enough to pass as white, cut all legal ties with her, terrified that her work would expose his African ancestry. They built institutions that outlasted the legal systems designed to destroy them, but the world they built was about to collide with a force that did not recognize complexity, and individual stories can only go so far in showing how that collision happened. The DNA showed a population with 3 ancestral streams: African, European, Native American, woven together by women who held the biological memory. What happened next continues to shape how thousands of Americans understand their own identity today. The legal battle over who is white and who is black did not end in the 19th century. It was still being fought in Louisiana courtrooms in the 1980s. And the DNA from those women is still sitting in the bodies of people who have no idea they carry it. In 1803, the Louisiana Purchase transferred the entire territory to the United States, and with that transfer, the world these women had built began to collapse. Under French and Spanish rule, Louisiana operated on a 3-level system: white colonists, free people of color known as gens de couleur libre, enslaved people. That middle category had real rights. They could own property, make contracts, own weapons, sue in court, and inherit from white partners. It came with real rights, property, contracts, courts, inheritance. The Americans brought a different system, just 2 sides: white or black. Anglo-American administrators looked at the economic independence of free Creole women and saw a threat to the plantation economy. So they passed laws to strangle it. They restricted manumission, making it harder to free enslaved people. They banned free people of color from immigrating into the state. They limited property inheritance and made it illegal for free people of color to testify against whites in court. By 1857, all manumissions were banned entirely. The numbers tell the story. In 1830, free people of color made up 7.7% of New Orleans' population. By the Civil War, that number had fallen to 2.6%. Thousands of families left, for France, for Mexico, for Haiti. Those who stayed faced a system designed to make them disappear. Then came the one-drop rule. In 1970, Louisiana passed a law defining anyone with more than 1/32 Negro blood as legally black. 1 drop. That tiny fraction was enough to erase a person's legal identity. Consider the case of Susie Galore Phipps. She was born with fair skin and blue eyes. She lived her entire life as a white woman, married a white man, raised white children. In 1977, she applied for a passport and requested her birth certificate. The state told her she was classified as colored. She sued. The state hired a family history expert who traced her maternal line back over 2 centuries. They found an enslaved woman named Margarita in 1770, taken as a mistress by a French planter named Jean-Grégoire Guillory. Over the next 5 generations, Phipps's ancestors had married white individuals exclusively. Their skin was white, their lives were white. But that single maternal thread from 1770 was enough. The court ruled against her. She was legally black because of a woman who lived 213 years before her. 5 generations of living as white meant nothing. One maternal ancestor from 1770 meant everything. Now, meet Naomi Drake. From 1949 to 1965, she served as registrar of the New Orleans Bureau of Vital Statistics. She kept a private list of about 250 French Creole surnames, names like Duplessis and Guillory. Her staff was instructed to pull any birth, death, or marriage certificate bearing those names. If a child's birth certificate listed their race as white, Drake's office conducted genealogical investigations going back 4 to 5 generations. If they found a single ancestor designated as mulatto, colored, or Negro, Drake changed the race on the certificate on her own. She did not notify the family. Between 1960 and 1965, Drake held at least 4,700 birth certificates and 1,100 death certificates on hold. Parents could not enroll their children in white schools. Property transfers stalled. Marriage licenses sat unsigned. If you refused to accept a certificate marked colored, Drake simply withheld it. She even monitored local obituaries. When someone who had lived as white died, Drake checked funeral homes and cemeteries for clues of African ancestry. If she found any, she changed the death certificate post-burial. A government employee, without firing a single shot, edited the racial identities of thousands of citizens, one certificate at a time. A formal hearing finally dismissed her in 1965, but the damage was done. The 3-race world of Louisiana Creoles had been collapsed into 2 sides, one category at a time. Despite decades of government erasing, the mother's DNA of Creole descendants remains completely unaltered. The maternal DNA that passes from mother to daughter, generation after generation, is a lasting biological record of the exact 3-race mixing the state tried to erase. Think about that for a second. Naomi Drake could change a birth certificate. She could change a death certificate. She could hold documents on hold and force families into legal chaos. But she could not reach into the bodies of Creole women and rewrite their genetic code. The DNA kept its memory. And then the science caught up. In 2015, a study by Bryce and colleagues in the American Journal of Human Genetics analyzed the genetic data of thousands of 23andMe customers. They found that approximately 3.5% of self-reported European Americans across the country carry real African roots, but the highest concentration was in Louisiana. In that state, roughly 12% of white-identified individuals carry more than 1% African ancestry. That number is proof in the DNA of Creole maternal lines crossing the color line. Women who passed as white, who cut ties with their families, who disappeared into the white population to escape the laws that kept races apart, their DNA carried on through generations of descendants who have no idea they carry it. They deserved better from history. Science is finally giving them their story back. Picture them one last time. The enslaved woman in 1770, whose name survives only in a legal document used against her descendant 2 centuries later. The free women of color who built businesses and bought their children's freedom. The women who watched Naomi Drake's clerks pull their birth certificates and change their race without asking. And the DNA that outlasted every registrar's pen, every legislative act, every attempt to erase what they were. Pull all of this together and a single picture emerges. No single moment broke the 3-race world. It was a quiet catastrophe. A slow, growing collapse, one certificate at a time. Women who had built an empire were collapsed into two categories that could not hold them. And the math of that collapse is brutally simple. Every birth certificate held on hold was a family pushed into invisibility. Every race change without notification was a generation lost. Extinction did not need to kill anyone. It only needed to push the needle slightly further in a direction it was already moving. That is what makes it disturbing. The erasure was real. But the DNA is a lasting witness. It cannot be edited. It cannot be held on hold. It is still there, passed from mother to child, carrying the genetic memory of a three-race world that the state tried to bury. If you've been following stories like this, consider subscribing. There's more to come. And share this with someone who needs to hear it. What the DNA revealed about Louisiana Creole women is disturbing, precisely because it is so human. Displacement, isolation, survival at the edges. They ran out of margin on paper, but not in the genome.